Hi, Grandma. Today I'm going to be interviewing you about your time in Cuba and how it was living there. Our first question is, how long did you live in Cuba for?
I lived in Cuba about 4 months, I think. I was very young at the time, so I really don't remember the exact dates of when I was there. I attended preschool in Cuba. It was like somebody brought me to school in the morning and then picked me up about midday, and then I had the rest of the day to be with family. My grandmother was there with me. She's the one who took me, and her sister lived in Cuba all the time. So we stayed with her in her house, and her sister had a son who also lived in Cuba, and he had a son who was 3 years older than me. So I guess when he came home from school, the two of us played together.
What did you do, during free time besides play with?
I don't know. I don't remember what we did. I mean, we helped cook meals and prepare meals. I'm assuming we went to the beach some days, but because you live in a climate where it's summer all the time, most of the year, that people don't go to the beach every day like people in Massachusetts go every day in the summer when the weather is nice for the beach.
What were some of your favorite meals you had when you lived in Cuba?
Well, we used to do, I guess it's arroz con pollo, which is a chicken and rice dish we made. And we would eat guava paste for a snack and put the guava paste on a cracker. I can remember that. And I don't know what other foods, that they had there that we ate. Can't remember. My cousin who was older than me used to walk me to school, so the school was nearby, so he would walk me to school in the morning, and then my grandmother would pick me up at the end of the day.
Do you remember what town you lived in Cuba?
It was in Havana.
Oh, nice.
So, which was the capital of Cuba?
Yeah. Do you remember any of your school friends?
No, I don't remember any school friends. I was 4 years old, 4 years old, so, I didn't keep in contact with them, and I was only there for like 5 or 6 months, so I wasn't there all the time.
So you spoke Spanish while you were in Cuba.
Yeah.
Was it hard when you came back to America adapting to the English?
Well, when I came back to America, we came into New York, and I think we flew into New York. There wasn't many flights going back and forth to Cuba. And my mother and father drove down to New York to pick me and my grandmother up, and I couldn't speak any English. And so the ladies, when we came back, the ladies wanted to go shopping in New York while they could, and my father took me around, and I was asking him for different things, like for something to drink or whatever, and I could only speak Spanish. So he was afraid that somebody would, say something to him like, did he steal this child? Because I was speaking in Spanish and he only spoke English. But all I remember about that is what my mother and father told me when I got older.
Oh.
So. And all the ladies went shopping, and my father had just me while the ladies went shopping.
So what was it like in school when you didn't know any English?
I don't know. I don't remember that, but it must have been a little hard for me because I went to school in Cuba, and the majority of the kids in the classroom, I don't remember, what they spoke, but I'm thinking that they mostly spoke Spanish.
Um,
But maybe some of them learned some English words.
yeah. So, you had to leave Cuba because it was stolen?
Because it was.
Because, of something political that was happening?
No, I didn't have to leave Cuba. No, I just went with my grandmother, and we went for probably a half a year. So we went, say, from January to May.
Mhm.
And then, of course, she lived in Newburyport, and I lived in Newburyport. So, she had to come back to her house, and, my parents wanted me back to their house too. So that's what happened.
Was Spanish your first language?
No, English. English was my first language.
But you didn't know much of English because you were pretty young at the time you went to Cuba.
I didn't know any Spanish until I went to Cuba.
Oh, so
So when I
say-
went, I didn't know any Spanish words at all.
So you say like adapting to Spanish was pretty easy?
I don't remember, but I think I probably had difficulties with it.
Yeah.
And the teacher, all the class was completely in Spanish, and the people I was with in Cuba, they all spoke Spanish, but some of my grandmother's sister and my grandmother's nephew all were bilingual, so they spoke Spanish and English. So if I was trying to communicate something, they would help me out with the words.
That must have been really nice. Did you spend any time at home, like practicing your Spanish or learning your Spanish?
In Cuba?
Yeah.
Well, when I was in Cuba, everybody just spoke Spanish to me most of the time, and then if I said a word in English, they would say, "Oh, this is the word you're talking about." Like, for instance, if I wanted a glass of milk and I said milk, or point to a container of milk, that's how I communicated. But then they would try to teach me the word for milk was leche and tell me what the word was. So next time I would learn the word and be able to ask for something in Spanish.
That must have made you feel really good.
Right.
Yeah. So
But apparently I was the only one in the preschool or pre-kindergarten class that didn't speak Spanish only.
that must have been pretty hard.
Right. And then when I came home, my mother and father came down to New York to pick me up on the plane with my grandmother. And my grandmother and mother wanted to go shopping. So I stayed, my father took me around to do whatever in New York. And some people thought that he had stolen me because he could only talk English and I could only talk Spanish.
Huh.
So we were having, difficulty, people were staring, did my father steal me from something when, it was his own child?
Yeah. So you were a Spanish teacher, right?
Yes.
So Cuba, speaking Spanish in Cuba really helped you with your career of being a Spanish teacher.
Well, I think it helped me some, but I was in kindergarten, so I was 5 when I went to Cuba, and when I came back, I only spoke English because there was not, people who spoke Spanish where I lived.
Mhm.
So but when I started taking Spanish in high school, it was just like a new language, like everybody else who was taking Spanish for the first time in high school.
Well, thank you for spending
Okay.
your time with me.
Okay, that was a good interview.
Thank you.
Are you doing this for a project? Or?
Yeah, I'm doing it for an English project.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you.
Okay.